Oscar sends a warning to rivals after a shocking stat reveals why he is the title favorite. New F1 brakes have been developed for 2026 after shocking speeds. Do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Formula One is unpredictable, but every now and then a bold statement cuts through the noise and makes fans sit up and pay attention. And recently, Guenther Steiner, the former Haas team principal, made exactly that kind of statement. According to him, Oscar Piastri is the clear favorite for the 2025 Formula One World Championship. Yes, you heard that right. Not Verstappen, not Hamilton, not Leclerc, but the young Australian, Oscar Piastri. So today we're diving deep into why Steiner believes this, what it means for the 2025 season, and whether Piastri really has what it takes to become Formula One's next world champion. But before we break it down, let me ask you a question. Who do you honestly think will win the 2025 title? Take a second and lock in your answer, because by the end of this video, you might see things very differently. Let's start with the quote that set the F1 world buzzing. Speaking recently, Steiner said, "Oscar Piastri is the clear favorite for the 2025 championship. He has everything lined up to do it." That's not just casual praise. Steiner is known for being blunt, sometimes even brutally honest. So when he makes a prediction this strong, you know it's worth listening to. And here's the psychology at play. When a respected figure makes a bold prediction, our brains can't help but pay attention. It creates a sense of curiosity and a need to resolve uncertainty. We immediately start thinking, what does he see that I don't? So let's unpack it. First, we need to look at Piastri's journey so far. He's only in his early 20s, but his rise through the junior categories was nothing short of phenomenal. He won back-to-back championships in Formula Renault Eurocup, Formula 3, and Formula 2, something almost no driver has ever done. That kind of track record isn't luck, it's proof of consistency, raw speed, and the ability to adapt instantly to new challenges. And in Formula One, adaptability is everything, because every season the cars evolve, the rules change, and the ability to master those changes separates the good drivers from the great ones. But talent alone doesn't win world championships. You need the right car, the right team, and the right timing. And that's where Steiner believes Piastri has the edge. In 2024, McLaren showed massive progress. They went from struggling at the back of the midfield to fighting at the front. And while Lando Norris often grabbed the headlines, Piastri proved he could match and sometimes even beat his more experienced teammate. Steiner pointed to McLaren's steady upward trajectory as the key reason why 2025 could belong to Piastri. The regulations are stable, McLaren has momentum, and their car development looks like it could genuinely challenge Red Bull. And here's something psychological to keep in mind. Momentum creates belief, and belief fuels performance. When a team starts believing they can win, everything changes. From the engineers pushing harder in the factory to the driver finding that extra tenth of a second on track. Now let's address the obvious question. What about Max Verstappen? Max is the reigning champion, the driver everyone expects to dominate. So how could Piastri possibly be the favorite over him? This is where Steiner's argument gets interesting. Red Bull may be facing uncertainty. Internal politics, pressure from rivals, and questions around stability could affect their dominance. And history tells us that dynasties in Formula One never last forever. Ferrari's Schumacher era ended, Mercedes' Hamilton era ended, and at some point, Red Bull's Verstappen era will too. The real question is, when? And Steiner is suggesting 2025 might be the turning point. But there's another layer here, the psychology of a challenger. When you're the underdog, you have nothing to lose. Piastri is still early in his career. Every podium, every win feels like a step forward. He's hungry, and hunger drives risk-taking. Hunger creates breakthroughs. Meanwhile, champions like Verstappen feel the weight of expectation. Fans, media, even the team, everyone expects them to win. That pressure can create cracks. It can make even the strongest driver second-guess themselves in crucial moments. So the psychological battle isn't just about speed, it's about mindset. And in 2025, the mindset advantage could shift to Piastri. Now let's imagine this. Picture the first few races of the 2025 season. If McLaren shows up with a car that's genuinely competitive and Piastri outperforms Norris, suddenly the narrative flips. Instead of being the rookie learning the ropes, Piastri becomes the driver carrying McLaren's hopes for their first world championship in decades. And that storyline is powerful. Fans love an underdog turned hero. Sponsors flock to rising stars, and the energy around a breakthrough season can create an unstoppable wave. That's exactly what Steiner is hinting at. He sees the ingredients for a championship run. Young talent, rising team, momentum, and the right psychological setup. But let's be clear, this isn't guaranteed. Formula One is brutal. We've seen talented drivers hyped as future champions who never quite made it. Just ask Nico Hülkenberg or even Daniel Ricciardo. Sometimes, circumstances never align. So while Steiner is calling Piastri the favorite, it's still a bold prediction, and bold predictions are designed to spark debate. Which brings me back to you. Do you agree with Steiner? Do you see Piastri as the favorite for 2025? Or do you think Verstappen, Hamilton, or Leclerc will shut that door? Take a second to comment below with your prediction, because here's the fun part. In a year's time, we'll look back and see who called it right. So, to wrap it all up, Guenther Steiner has declared Oscar Piastri the clear favorite for the 2025 Formula One World Championship. His reasoning? Piastri's proven talent, McLaren's momentum, Red Bull's potential instability, and the psychological edge of being the hungry underdog. Whether you agree or not, one thing's for sure. The 2025 season is shaping up to be one of the most exciting in years, and if Piastri does pull it off, it could mark the beginning of a brand new era in Formula One. So buckle up, because the fight for 2025 might not be as predictable as we think. What if one single clause in a contract could keep one of Formula One's most successful team bosses away from the sport forever? Christian Horner, the man who transformed Red Bull from an ambitious energy drink sponsor into a Formula One powerhouse. 20 years at the helm, 6 Constructors' Championships, 8 Drivers' Championships, and countless rivalries, controversies, and triumphs along the way. But today, the headlines aren't about victories. They're about what happens when the paddock door slams shut. Because after Horner's shock departure following the British Grand Prix, questions swirl about whether he will ever be allowed to return to Formula One. And according to former driver Juan Pablo Montoya, the answer may lie in a single legal clause. Stay with me, because this isn't just a contract dispute. This is about the balance of power in Formula One. It's about whether one of the most influential figures in the sport's modern history has been silenced not by politics or rivals, but by paperwork. Let's break it down. For 2 decades, Christian Horner has been the face of Red Bull Racing. The youngest team principal when he started in 2005, he grew alongside the team, building it from a midfield outfit into the dominant force we know today. The Sebastian Vettel era, the Max Verstappen era, and through it all, Horner wasn't just a manager. He was a strategist, a motivator, and at times a provocateur. Loved by some, hated by others, but always impossible to ignore. So when Red Bull announced his dismissal after the British Grand Prix in 2025, it sent shockwaves through the sport. The paddock buzzed with speculation. Was it internal politics? Was it corporate pressure? Was it inevitable? But here's the twist. According to Montoya, Horner might not be free to simply walk into another team, because buried inside his separation agreement, there may be a clause preventing him from returning to Formula One entirely. Think about that for a moment. The man who defined Red Bull's F1 story, who knows the sport inside out, may be legally locked out of the game he helped shape. Now, this isn't unheard of. In business, non-compete clauses are common. They stop high-level executives from immediately joining rivals with sensitive information. In Formula One, where data, strategy, and relationships are worth millions, those clauses can be even stricter. Montoya put it bluntly. The only thing that would stop Horner would be a clause in the contract. And that raises some fascinating questions. Which teams might have wanted Horner? Well, the list is longer than you think. Aston Martin, who've poured billions into their F1 project and crave an experienced leader. Alpine, desperate for direction after years of mismanagement. Haas, who need more than survival if they want to be competitive. And even Cadillac, the new American entrant, who could use a seasoned operator to navigate the politics of the sport. Imagine Horner stepping into any of those garages. The shakeup would be seismic. His experience, his connections, his leadership style, it could transform a struggling team overnight. But if the clause is real, none of that may happen. Instead, Horner could be stuck on the sidelines, not by choice, but by design. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. Reports suggest Horner's exit package from Red Bull was massive. We're talking about one of the biggest severance deals ever seen in Formula One. Some insiders even claim his gardening leave, that's corporate jargon for enforced time off, runs until the end of 2025. That means he's being paid not to work, paid not to speak, paid effectively to disappear. But can you really silence someone like Christian Horner? Inside the paddock, whispers suggest otherwise. Red Bull staff morale has already taken a hit. Many contracts within the team were tied directly to Horner's leadership. Engineers, strategists, and key figures joined because of him. Without Horner, will they stay? Or will the domino effect begin, with talent bleeding out to other teams? And if that happens, the clause keeping Horner out might backfire. Because while you can block a man from entering a paddock, you can't stop the ripple effects of his absence. This is the psychology of influence. Horner's presence, or lack of it, still shapes the sport. His rivals know it, his former colleagues feel it, and the fans, they're left asking the same burning question. What happens next? Will Horner bide his time, wait out the contract, and make a dramatic return once he's free? Or will he step into another motorsport arena entirely, IndyCar, Formula E, even endurance racing, just to stay in the game? Here's the irony. The more restrictive the clause, the more anticipation builds. By trying to close the door on Horner, Red Bull may have set the stage for one of the most anticipated comebacks in recent memory. But until then, the silence speaks volumes. Imagine the scene. The cameras pan across the paddock at the start of next season. Toto Wolff, Fred Vasseur, Andrea Stella, all there, all in their roles. But no Christian Horner, no witty one-liners in press conferences, no fiery clashes on the pit wall. Just absence. It's a reminder that in Formula One, power isn't only about cars and drivers. It's also about contracts, clauses, and the fine print that decides who gets to play the game. So, where does this leave us? Right now, Horner's future in Formula One hangs in the balance. He may be the most experienced free agent the sport has ever seen. But if Montoya is right, the legal chains binding him could keep him away until the ink dries and the clause expires. And that brings us back to the big question. Is this truly the end of Christian Horner in Formula One? Or just the beginning of the next chapter in a career built on defying the odds? Because if there's one thing Horner has shown, over the years, it's resilience. Whether battling rivals, corporate politics, or the very regulations of the sport, he's always found a way to stay in the game. And maybe, just maybe, this time will be no different. So what do you think? Will Christian Horner ever walk back into a Formula One paddock? Or has Red Bull locked the door for good? Have you ever wondered what Formula One cars will look like in 2026? Not just the sleek bodywork or futuristic aerodynamics, but the way these machines will stop. Because while everyone talks about speed, in F1, the secret weapon has always been braking. And now Formula One is on the edge of a revolution. A brake revolution so extreme that even the engineers are calling it uncharted territory. Today we're diving into the uncovered designs of F1's 2026 braking systems. And trust me, what you're about to hear will completely change the way you think about stopping a car. Let's start with this. When you think of Formula One, you think of flat-out acceleration, top speeds over 300 kilometers per hour, and neck-breaking cornering forces. But here's the truth. None of that matters if you can't slow the car down in time. Brakes are the unsung heroes of Formula One. They're what allow drivers to push the limits, attack late into corners, and defend wheel-to-wheel at 200 miles an hour. Without world-class braking, there's no world-class racing. But in 2026, braking will never be the same again. So what's changing? Formula One is moving towards its new era of 50% electrification. That means half the power of the car will come from the internal combustion engine, and the other half from the electric hybrid systems. Sounds exciting, right? But here's the catch. If you want to harvest all that electrical energy, you need to completely rethink how the brakes work. That's where the drama begins. Right now, F1 cars use a combination of friction brakes, those carbon discs you see glowing red hot at night races, and electrical recovery from the MGUK, the system that harvests energy under braking. It's a delicate balance. Too much harvesting and the brakes overheat. Too little and you lose performance. But in 2026, this balance gets turned upside down. Why? Because the amount of energy F1 wants to harvest is double what's possible today. In fact, the rear brakes will need to do less friction work because the electric systems will take over much of the load. Think about that. Brakes that don't actually brake as much. Strange, isn't it? This leads to the first shocking change. Rear brake discs will be smaller, weaker, and in some cases almost unnecessary. Imagine telling an F1 engineer 10 years ago that the rear brakes might barely be used. They'd laugh you out of the room, but this is exactly where we're heading. The 2026 designs suggest rear brakes shrinking to sizes we've never seen in modern Formula One. They'll look more like backup systems than primary stoppers. And here's the twist. Drivers will still need absolute confidence when they slam the brake pedal at 330 kilometers per hour. So how do you give drivers control when half the work is being done by software and electricity? That's the real engineering nightmare. Let me ask you this. If you were behind the wheel of an F1 car, would you trust the computer to stop you before a concrete wall? That's exactly the psychological challenge facing drivers in 2026. Braking won't just be about physical parts anymore. It'll be about algorithms, the software that decides how much to harvest, how much to apply friction, and how to make it feel natural to the driver. Because here's the problem. If the brake pedal feels inconsistent, if sometimes it bites and sometimes it doesn't, you can't drive on the limit. And if you can't drive on the limit, you can't race. This is why engineers are calling the new systems extreme. It's not just a new part bolted on, it's a whole new philosophy of stopping a Formula One car. But let's zoom out for a second. Why is F1 even doing this? Why risk braking one of the most sensitive areas of performance? The answer lies in Formula One's commitment to sustainability. The sport wants to show the world that hybrid technology isn't just practical, it's powerful. By harvesting twice as much energy under braking, the cars can rely less on fuel, more on electricity, and still deliver that insane F1 spectacle. In other words, Formula One is turning every braking zone into a mini power plant. Every time a driver slows down, they're generating the electricity that will launch them back up to speed. It's like having a slingshot charged by every corner. Sounds futuristic, doesn't it? Now let's talk numbers. In today's cars, drivers can harvest up to about 120 kilowatts under braking. In 2026, that figure jumps to 350 kilowatts. That's nearly triple. To put that in perspective, that's enough energy to power an entire house, captured in just a few seconds of braking, and it happens dozens of times every single lap. But here's the kicker. If the systems don't work seamlessly, the racing could actually suffer. Drivers might complain of strange pedal feels, sudden losses of confidence, or even failures to slow down in time. And in a sport where braking zones are often the #1 overtaking opportunity, that could dramatically change how races unfold. So what does this mean for us, the fans? It means 2026 might deliver some of the most unpredictable racing we've ever seen. Overtakes could become harder, or they could become even more daring. Drivers who master the new braking style will gain massive advantages over those who struggle, and teams that crack the software code will dominate the field. Not because they're faster on the straights, but because they're smoother under braking. Remember, brakes win races. It's not the glamorous side of Formula One, but it's the side that often decides championships. So here's the big question. Will this new extreme braking era make Formula One better or worse? On one hand, it's a bold leap into the future, proving that even the most traditional parts of a car can be reinvented. On the other hand, it introduces risk, unpredictability, and a massive learning curve. One thing's for sure, 2026 is going to test drivers in ways we've never seen before. Not just physically, but mentally. Because trusting a car to stop when you hit the brakes is the most fundamental trust a driver can have. And now that trust will depend on technology more than ever. Imagine the opening race of 2026. Engines roaring, the lights go out, and 20 drivers hurtle towards turn 1. Everyone's braking with this brand new, half mechanical, half electrical system. Will it be smooth, or will we see chaos, with cars overshooting corners, smoke rising, and strategies collapsing? That's the drama Formula One has just unleashed. So the next time you watch an F1 car fly down a straight at 330 kilometers per hour, remember this. Speed is nothing without control. And in 2026, control is about to be redefined. The brakes of the future aren't just about slowing down. They're about powering up, and that might just change Formula One forever. Have you ever noticed how quickly the mighty can fall in Formula One? Not too long ago, Red Bull looked completely untouchable. Max Verstappen was winning everything in sight, and the RB19 and RB20 were spoken about as some of the most dominant cars in F1 history. But now, the tone has shifted. Red Bull, once feared, is suddenly vulnerable, and the latest admission from the team's new boss, Laurent Mekies, confirms just how deep the struggles are. The RB21, Red Bull's current car, is receiving only minimal upgrades for the rest of the season. That's right, the car that's already slipping behind rivals won't be heavily developed anymore. At first glance, that might sound like Red Bull is giving up. But the story is much deeper than that. Let's set the stage. Red Bull has dropped to 4th in the Constructors' Championship. 4th. For a team that was comfortably sitting on top of the sport for years, this is more than just a dip in form. It's a crisis. They're now trailing Mercedes by more than 40 points. That gap isn't impossible to close, but with a car that clearly lacks pace, it feels like climbing Everest in flip-flops. The warning signs were clear in Hungary. Max Verstappen, the three-time world champion, could only drag the RB21 to 9th place. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda, 17th. On raw pace alone, they were never in the fight. And when a team like Red Bull isn't even fighting for podiums, you know something has gone badly wrong. So why the decision to stop pushing upgrades onto the car? Isn't that like surrendering? This is where psychology comes in. In F1, you're never just racing for today, you're racing for tomorrow. Mecky's made it clear, Red Bull's priority is to learn from the painful weekends, like Hungary, and focus their energy on the future. That future is 2026, because while the RB21 struggles today, the regulations that are coming in just 2 years' time will completely reset the playing field. New chassis rules, new hybrid systems, and most importantly, Red Bull's partnership with Ford to become a full-blown power unit manufacturer. Think about the psychology of this move. Imagine you're playing chess and you know you're going to lose the current game. Do you waste all your energy defending, or do you study your opponent so you can dominate the next time? Red Bull has chosen the latter. Now, let's pause here. This is a risky gamble. The RB21 is still fighting for points in 2025. And while shifting focus to 2026 makes sense strategically, it could mean another year of bruises. Fans are used to seeing Verstappen dominate, but how long will Max stay patient if he's stuck in the midfield? That's an intriguing psychological pressure bubbling under the surface. And let's not forget the morale inside the team. Engineers and mechanics thrive on success. Winning keeps everyone motivated. But when podiums disappear, keeping spirits high becomes one of the toughest jobs in F1. Mechis will need to balance short-term pain with long-term vision, making sure the team doesn't lose faith. Let's dig deeper into why this minimal upgrade decision is so crucial. Every Formula One team works under strict budget caps. That means you can't just throw money endlessly at development anymore. Every euro counts, and right now, the smart teams are already funneling resources into 2026, because the new rules will completely transform car design. Red Bull knows they're not going to magically find seconds of pace with a couple of updates this year. At best, they might claw back a tenth or two, hardly enough to catch the likes of Mercedes or McLaren, who are currently surging. So instead of chasing tiny gains, they're investing in the big leap ahead, and that big leap centers around Ford. This partnership isn't just about slapping a logo on the car. For the first time in decades, Red Bull is becoming a proper power unit manufacturer. They won't just design the chassis and aero, they'll build the heart of the machine too. That's a monumental shift, and it requires massive resources, time, and brainpower. But here's the catch: fans live in the now, and right now, Red Bull is losing. Imagine being Max Verstappen. Just last year, you were cruising to wins with one hand on the wheel. Now you're fighting for 9th place and watching rivals celebrate. How long before frustration boils over? That's a huge storyline to watch, because if Red Bull can't convince Verstappen that their long-term plan will bring success, he might start looking elsewhere. This is where Mecky's psychology game really matters. His words after Hungary weren't about excuses, they were about lessons. He said the team needs to learn from difficult weekends. It's about framing failure not as the end, but as part of the process. That mindset shift is critical, both for the drivers and for the staff back at Milton Keynes. So, what does all this mean for the rest of the season? In simple terms, don't expect miracles. The RB21 will stay largely as it is. Red Bull may pick up points here and there, but podiums will be rare, and wins almost impossible unless chaos strikes at the front. But if you zoom out, this season might actually become one of Red Bull's most important in years, because it forces them to rethink everything. Dominance breeds complacency, but struggle breeds innovation. The cracks exposed in 2025 could be the very lessons that build a championship-winning car in 2026. Let me leave you with this thought. Formula One is as much a psychological war as it is an engineering battle. Right now, Red Bull is losing the former to teams like Mercedes and McLaren, but by accepting short-term pain and investing in the future, they might just flip the script when the new era arrives. For fans, it's going to be fascinating. Will Red Bull's gamble pay off? Will Ford deliver the power unit they need? And perhaps the biggest question of all, will Max Verstappen stick around long enough to see the plan succeed? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, Red Bull's decision to scale back the RB21 upgrades marks a turning point in modern Formula One. From here on, the countdown to 2026 has officially begun.